This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. Episode 186, recorded December 15th, 2018. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So, today we are going to be talking about Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, the Netflix adaptation of the comic book series of the same name, which in itself is like a darker, kind of grittier version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. That, it's the same showrunner, that the guy who's running the show, who's writing the episodes for this show, is the guy that created that comic, that adaptation, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So, loyal adaptation, because he's adapting his own stuff. Maybe that means we'll get Cthulhu next season.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to talk about Sabrina. So let's kind of kick things off. So the main storyline of this season, at least, is that you have this character of Sabrina Spellman, who is half human, half witch, and she's coming of age. So I think it's at the end of the first episode, right? That she turned 16?
Yep, it's the end of the first episode, because the first few episodes are all building up to Halloween, which is her birthday, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's building up to her 16th birthday, which is when she is supposed to sign her name in the Book of the Beast and officially become an adult witch, I guess. It's like a rite of passage into witchdom, and it also seals the deal in which Satan owns her soul. So there's that.
In addition to that, because she's half human and half witch, she has a human life, a human aspect of her life that a lot of witches never had. And so she's supposed to be giving that up as well. So that's a big part of her dilemma in making that choice, is that she has to give up her human friends and move away from them and give up her relationship and everything like that. So it's all kind of about her kind of coming to grips with the idea that she's going to have to do that. And kind of struggling a little bit against that and saying, maybe I don't want to do that. And it's that balance of those two lifestyles that kind of makes up at least the first season of the show.
Right. So basically, the through line through the season, the main story of the season is Sabrina has to sign the Book of the Beast. She has to go through her, I forgot what they call it, the dark something. Everything is dark.
But the dark evil thingamajig.
But she has to go through the ritual, right, and sign her book. And what happens is the first couple episodes build up to that by showing Sabrina, her life, as a mortal. She has a boyfriend, a mortal boyfriend. She has two mortal friends. She goes to regular ass high school. And basically she is very attached to her mortal life, to that side of herself. And this is causing her to have doubts about signing her name away, because she knows when she does, she's going to have to go to witch school, and she's going to have to leave her mortal life completely behind.
Yeah, she has to head off to Hogwarts, and she has to...
to Hogwarts. Yeah, exactly. She has to go to Hogwarts. And so that's the main conflict driving the first part of the show, is that she doesn't want to give up everything she has.
And it's kind of what she does. She kind of refuses to give up.
Yeah, she kind of refuses. There's also the high priest, of the Coven's church.
A position that her father used to hold before he died.
Right, exactly. He died in a plane crash, 100% an accident, right?
Which further complicates her relationship with the current high priest, because...
Yeah, Father Blackwood.
Father Blackwood, yes.
So he basically, Zelda knowing that Sabrina was expressing doubts, she calls Father Blackwood over to have him talk her into it, and she basically questions him, and, he gives her some lines about free will and stuff.
He's basically feeding her a trough of bullshit.
Yeah, he's feeding her a trough of bullshit to make her feel comfortable. And it does, a little bit. And it does. And so...
Sabrina kind of has her last night with her friends.
She decides she's going to go through with it, right? She decides, okay, I'm just going to do this. and it'll be okay.
They did a cool thing where they had her, she went with her friends to like a costume party. And she went in like it was like her mom's wedding dress. And so they did like a cool thing where when she left and she crossed kind of the border into the forest where the ritual was going to take place, like her white dress turned black.
Yes.
To kind of represent this like change of lifestyle that she was undergoing.
Yeah, she changed black. And then when she finally gets to that moment where she's supposed to sign her name, she hesitates, and Father Blackwood gets all aggressive about it, right? And suddenly she realizes that, he was feeding her a bunch of bullshit earlier. Like he was kind of full of shit. And so
he's basically like repeat after me. I give up all free will.
Yeah. And then you're like, but you said being a witch was all about free will. And he's like,
shut up and say it.
yeah, shut up and say it. And so she nopes out of that pretty hard. And they chase her, they chase her down. But then they're repelled, when Hilda declares that there's like a spell around their home that will destroy witches if they try to cross it.
Kind of like Ambrose activates.
Yeah, the kind like Ambrose activates. But there wasn't really, like Hilda reveals afterwards that, there wasn't really a spell. She just said that and kind of hoped that they would believe it.
Yeah.
That whole sequence of events sets up the through line throughout the season, because throughout the season we have Lady Madam Satan, who had taken over the body of Miss Blackwood, who's one of Sabrina's teachers. We see her at the very beginning of the first episode as Miss Blackwood.
Not Miss Blackwood, Mary Wardwell.
That's right. I'm getting names mixed up. Yeah, Mary Wardwell, Miss Wardwell, who we see at the beginning of the first episode, as Miss Wardwell. And then we do see what happens to her, where she picks up Madam Satan off the side of the road, who looks like a young woman at this point. And then she kills her and takes over her body. Yeah. And her singular goal is to get Sabrina to sign the Book of the Beast so that Satan can have her soul and control her, and the reasons why Satan is so interested in Sabrina aren't like outright stated, but you can kind of guess, you can guess it's because she is half mortal and that she is half witch.
Also, the half witch side of her is from like a really powerful family.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that mixture makes her potentially more powerful than other witches.
Yes, by the end of the series, that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
There's something she does at the very end of the series that they directly state, like, only a handful of witches has ever done, this thing, and she just does it.
And she just does it. Yeah, so that mixture, so that makes Satan very interested in her. So yeah, getting her to sign away her soul is like the top priority, right? And Father Blackwood is in on this conspiracy, because we see there are scenes where he is talking and conspiring with Madam Satan.
Well, it's almost like it's two separate strategies going on at the same time, the same purpose,
right?
Like he's got his plan and she has her plan.
Yeah,
so his plan is basically just to kind of like feed her a bunch of bullshit, like he did before the ceremony, but also even afterwards, like, okay, we'll work it out. You can still have part of your mortal life, and then you can visit the school on these days and visit your regular school. And it's all like compromise.
Well, he doesn't come up with compromises until after he is thoroughly owned. We gotta remember after the incident, he attempts to put Sabrina and her aunts on trial, for blasphemy, for refusing to sign the book and,
breach of contract, I think they said.
Yeah, it was like breach of contract. That's right. Because apparently, her parents, when she was born, had already signed her soul over to Satan. So, so Sabrina's refusal to seal it with her signature is a breach of contract. To that end, she gets Daniel Webster, who very famously beat the devil in in the courtroom before. He just happens to be living in Greendale, go figure.
He's like a great mind of
he's
a great legal mind for the paranormal world.
Yeah, he's immortal, but like he knows a lot about witch law, because apparently Sabrina's father, knew him and taught him a lot. Mm-hmm. They explain. And so basically, she gets him, and what they find out is that Sabrina's mother had her baptized in a Catholic church. So now
Hilda have her baptized.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Which actually creates some division among the Spellman house too, and causes Hilda to be excommunicated from the.
Yeah, it causes Hilda to be excommunicated. That's a no-no. But yeah, so it turns out Sabrina was baptized. So now there is a competing claim for her soul, right?
So basically, at this point, Father Blackwood's like, okay, I'll make this compromise. And it's at this point where you're like, okay, they are desperate for her soul, because this is like compromises they wouldn't make for her.
Yeah, it's compromise. And he's only making a compromise because, again, like, he got owned. He can't really, like, squirrel his way out of that one. So he's like, fuck. Okay, well, you know, so he allows her into, you know, the school, Hogwarts. He allows her into Hogwarts and to have her human life, but the reason he allows her into Hogwarts is solely so that he can have influence upon her and try to steer her towards what they want, which is...
He doesn't want that compromise to last. He wants to use that compromise he made as like a foothold to kind of further get into her life and force his way.
Right, exactly.
So it's not, the compromise isn't his end game. Like, Sabrina kind of sees it as an end game, like, oh, I've resolved this now. And it's like, no, he's still doing everything he can.
Yeah, it's like, no, nothing's resolved, actually. Well, you know, and that's another big thing about this is like how naive Sabrina is throughout like this whole season.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know like she's smart and she's powerful and stuff, but like she's also naive at the same time because Miss Wardwell is actually an evil demon trying to manipulate her, and this entire time she just like trusts her. Like even after she finds out like she wasn't who she said she was, you know, she just tells her she's a witch, and then like Sabrina takes it pretty much at face value.
Yeah. That's kind of like a big part of this show also, is that everything's kind of told from the perspective of somebody that's kind of already had their life mingled in with this kind of like supernatural lifestyle that all these people are living in.
Right.
And so we're not seeing it from the perspective of like, I think normally when you watch like a fantasy show like this, where there's like kind of, it takes place parallel to the world, you're kind of seeing it from the perspective of an outsider, you know?
Right.
It's always like, oh, isn't this crazy? Let you in here. But on this show, it's kind of like you're from kind of Sabrina's perspective, which is not an outsider, but also not like a full kind of member. Like there's a lot she doesn't know, but there's a lot she does.
There's a lot she does because she was raised, you know, in a witch's household. You know, her aunts are witches, and they raised her, and they're worldly and wise about like all this stuff.
So they have kind of like their own morality that is apart from what we would generally have, like in our society. You know?
Right, exactly.
And it's not seen as like weird when something kind of like hits one of those moral lines. It's like, oh no, yeah, this is their morality, so it's not a big deal.
Right, exactly.
That's a big part of the show. So this is, it plays into kind of her, you know, being naive is that she's not just like outright stupid. It's like, she's in this perspective that this is okay, that, you know, they worship Satan, there's all this stuff, but that's all okay. So it's not like, you know, where we would have, if we were in this situation from a non-outside perspective, it's like, oh, what's all this stuff about Satan, like puts me on edge and stuff like that. None of this puts her on edge because this is how she was raised.
Right, exactly. And I think that also serves to put her in danger, because like she is more trustful of the people around her than she should be. Really. Yeah. When she has people, even Father Blackwood, who she shouldn't trust.
Oh yeah, she shouldn't trust him at all. She
shouldn't trust him at all. She still ends up like trusting him, like basically believing that he's just trying to steer her into being a good witch.
He's a figure of religious authority in her upbringing.
Right, yeah.
So she's not conditioned to be suspicious of him.
That's true, yeah. And especially since like her Aunt Zelda, like, you know, basically like, you know, treats him as like the ultimate like moral authority, you know?
Yeah, definitely. That's, I think, a big part of what makes her able to kind of accept this is the questionable morality. Is Hilda's pretty on the light side of things, but Zelda kind of straddles that line pretty fiercely, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, Hilda is like normal, and like Zelda is like, you know, one like
a bit zealous.
Yeah, like the super religious type, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Zelda is like zealous.
So we should talk about Link now. No, just kidding.
yeah, we should talk about Link. But it's funny because it does make Sabrina, like, you know, kind of unaware of, like, the people plotting against her, you know?
Yeah. Or, like, unaware of the consequences of it, or
right.
how dangerous the situation is, because it's, like, kind of normalized for her, a lot of it.
Right, exactly. So there is that.
So we should kind of talk about, get back to Sabrina's mortal life. And, as you'd mentioned, she has a boyfriend named Harvey.
Yep.
And this is a big part of her throughout the season is he's kind of like her anchor to the mortal life. And every time she struggles with it's always him that makes her go, I need to stick with this mortal life. I need this. And when she gets further embedded into the witch lifestyle, it's usually because like either her and Harvey aren't talking at that moment or Harvey's got something else going on. And so his influence isn't on her as much. And that causes her to kind of slip more in that other direction. So you kind of have that. And that's all kind of eventually summed up. And they kind of set up what looks like it's going to be a love triangle, which I'm really glad they didn't go all the way on because it's such like a trope on like teen dramas and stuff that
right.
Like we don't really need it full on, but there's like kind of the roots of it. And I like that it's just there, but there's the roots of this love triangle between Sabrina, Harvey, and a guy named Nicholas, who is a warlock at the witch school at Hogwarts. As we're going to keep referring to it now. But and this is like you could just say like, oh, it's kind of a love triangle that never goes anywhere. But more than that, it's like, it's emblematic of her choice that she has somebody on the human side and somebody on the witch side. And so she's kind of enjoying these aspects. And romantically, she never shows interest in Nick in the way she did for Harvey. Like it never like hints that way, really. It's like, Nick is into her, but she never really reciprocates his feelings in that
No.
way. So
again, she's like, she's into Harvey, she's not thinking about Nick as like a potential, as a potential, like anything.
It just becomes like maybe a little bit of like a bad angel on her shoulder. More than anything.
Yeah, pretty much. It's clear that he's got a thing for her, but she's not reciprocating.
Yeah. And he's not fighting too hard for it either. It's just, I think it's all set up just basically to kind of illustrate or to epitomize, what she's going through as far as the two different lifestyles that she's trying to keep in balance.
Right. Exactly. To highlight two different lifestyles, like
it's something I imagine they're probably going to play with more in the second season.
Like now she goes to two schools at the same time. Like,
yeah.
How do you even juggle that? But anyway.
I think they'll play with that more in the second season, like with Nick being more of a romantic figure in her life, mainly just because of the way Harvey's role in the series is kind of taken throughout the first season. That there's going to be probably some division between them, and that could lead towards Nick finding a little bit of his way in.
Well, by the end of the season, there is division between Sabrina and Harvey, thanks to something extremely stupid that Sabrina does. With the best of intentions.
Stupid, but with good intentions. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Harvey and what leads up to that. So, Harvey's got like a pretty shitty home life.
He's got an abusive alcoholic father,
he's got a family that their whole life is connected to this coal mine.
Yeah.
Where they all lift 16 tons, and what do they get? Another day older and deeper in debt.
Yeah. Basically, what I'm getting, like, his father, like, owns the coal mine.
Yeah. Or runs it, at least.
Or at least runs it. And so basically he wants, Harvey and Harvey's brother to work the coal mines. Harvey doesn't want to work in the coal mines for obvious reasons. Obvious reasons being working a coal mine fucking sucks. Yeah. He wants to go work at the local bookstore, I guess. I want to say comic book store, but it seemed to be more books. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a bookstore / cafe or something.
Cafe or something. I don't know, but he wants to work there. And basically his dad, criticizes him for it and basically says, you're going to work in the mines.
You're going to lift those 16 tons.
You're going to lift those 16 tons. His older brother, basically protects him from his father.
Mm-hmm. We find out later on that he actually had made some pretty great sacrifices in order to stay around and protect his brother.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
He could have gone away to college, but ended up staying in town to protect his brother.
Yeah, because he didn't want to leave his brother alone with his father for good reasons.
Yeah. So Harvey's got this kind of crappy life where you see him he does start working in the mines. He immediately has a bad experience. But yeah, things are just not going well for Harvey in his home life. And Sabrina's kind of there and supportive of him, but he's got this shit he's got to deal with. But what it really illustrates more than anything is how important his brother is to him, which ends up becoming an integral plot point because, as Will had mentioned, Sabrina ends up doing something kind of stupid, which is basically, with good intentions, which is basically caused by the Weird Sisters, who we haven't mentioned yet. Two of them, not the leader of the group, but the other two lackeys.
So let's mention the Weird Sisters. The Weird Sisters are witches who are attending the School of the Dark Arts, or whatever you want to call it.
They're like adopted children of Father Blackwell.
Yeah, they're like they have no parents to speak of. They were adopted by Father Blackwood, and they were basically raised at the school apparently, and they hate Sabrina, and they hate her because they see her as lesser for only being half of a witch.
Yeah, well, I think it's that they're able to pick up on how important she is to Father Blackwood's machinations, and that pisses them off because it's like, why is she so important? Why is everything about her? Why is this? And she's just half witch. She's half human. She's a half breed. Why is she important at all? And so there's a lot of like resentment coming directly from that as far as that. So they kind of act as like Sabrina's bullies through at least through like the first half or so of the season. But through the course of it, Sabrina ends up kind of making nice somewhat with the leader of the Weird Sisters, Prudence Knight.
Yeah, she basically does it by showing them up, right? Because they find out when she's going through her hazing that like they're basically trying to kill her, and that through hazing they've killed a lot of young witches. Maybe not the weird.
The school has in general.
The school has, not the Weird Sisters specifically, but the school has, and so like all those spirits are still haunting the school. And then when Sabrina discovers these spirits, Sabrina, and Hilda kind of hatched this plan, this scheme to get the hazing to stop. And so what basically happens is the hazing comes to a head when they want Sabrina to hang from a tree, and Sabrina kind of summons these spirits, and these spirits like hang the Weird Sisters instead, and basically almost killing them, freaking them out.
Yeah.
And they let him go, and that's kind of when that ends between them. By the way, like Father Blackwood is pissed when he hears about that because, he basically scolds the leader of the Weird Sisters. He basically scolds her and says, how could you be shown up by a half witch? Who would just like who even like wasn't like even like fully into her powers, who just like started at that school and everything.
That's the interesting thing about Father Blackwood is that he's all for the bullying of Sabrina because he thinks that's eventually going to lead her to where he wants her to be. So it's these different perspectives because the bullying isn't happening on his command, but he knows it's happening, but he's okay with it because he thinks it's going to get him what he wants in the end.
Right. And he just wants her to sign that book. So does Madam Satan, and Madam Satan's tag is kind of like to insert herself into Sabrina's life as much as possible and kind of like be her guide and advisor. And she tries to do this through the guise of her teacher, like basically taking over advising the club that she comes up with her friends, and just trying to insert herself in any way that she can. Again, that comes to a head when Sabrina opens like this box that Father Blackwood gives her to solve, which Father Blackwood decides is going to be impossible because like Sabrina's father like came up with the puzzle and like locked it, and it's supposed to be like very super complex, like nobody can figure it out, like Sabrina,
Father Blackwood,
including Father Blackwood. So Father Blackwood gives it to Sabrina as like kind of a test, an impossible test, because Sabrina wants to start getting into like real magic classes, and Father Blackwood has kind of been holding her back from that, and so he kind of gives her that to say like, oh, okay, if you can solve that, I'll let you into the good stuff. And then he, kind of like laughing like, haha, she'll never solve that. But she does, and this releases like this dream demon.
Yeah.
Who was sealed in it, and the demon like kind of like basically puts everybody into like deep sleeps and then like haunts their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And Madam Satan finds out about this because Madam Satan is like spy at this point. She's spying on their house through like enchanted mirrors that she enchanted. So she's been spying on Sabrina. So she finds out about this, and she realizes if this demon kills Sabrina, that's gonna fuck everything up.
Yeah.
like that cannot happen. Like too much is riding on this.
So in order to help Sabrina get out of the situation, she ends up exposing herself.
Yeah, she ends up exposing herself. And Sabrina confronts her because she finally realizes that she's not who she says she is. And then that's when, thinking on her feet, she declares that she's a witch and that she was hiding it for the obvious reasons you would not want to declare to the world that you're a witch. Even though Sabrina can't figure out, if she's a witch, why isn't she involved with like the local covens, why hasn't this and this? She kind of comes up with a story about how she was like excommunicated from another coven somewhere, and again, like Sabrina like kind of takes all this at face value. And then instead of pushing her away from Sabrina like pulls her closer. So in the end, like this only like makes her job easier because she's already been trying to insert herself as an authority for Sabrina to turn to, but so she was kind of at arm's length because Sabrina considered her to be immortal. But now that Sabrina thinks she's a fellow witch and that she could be super helpful and everything, Sabrina pulls her closer, and this makes her job easier.
Yeah, we've kind of gone a little off topic here because we're trying to talk about the situation that happens with Harvey and his family.
Well, yeah, but
we brought up the Weird Sisters, but then we went way off topic.
We did, but we have to get around to it in the proper order, and that means that we have to go around to what the events that lead up to this happening. So, because eventually what happens is Miss Wardwell Madam Satan tells Sabrina, I forgot what they were even doing, but they were like, she tells Sabrina about like this witch in the woods that they go to meet. And what happens is Harvey and his brother and his father and his grandfather, I think, are in the same woods at the same time, and they shoot a deer, which they were trying to make Harvey shoot, but Harvey didn't shoot it in the end. But they shoot a deer and kill it, and it turns out to be this witch's familiar. The Weird Sisters, see it, and they know who did it, and they declare revenge against, the Kinkles for this.
More than that is that they also realize the name Kinkle and realize that means that they're from this family of witch hunters in the past that had hunted down.
Yeah, that had hunted down
just this familiar, it's this family's past.
Yeah, it's this family's past. They're like, oh, these guys are, they're descended from witch hunters, and they're still pulling the same shit, killing this witch's familiar, So we're just gonna get them, And Sabrina, pleads with the Weird Sisters not to do anything,
The leader of the Weird Sisters, Prudence Knight, is like agrees with Sabrina that they're not going to do anything, but the other two sisters kind of take off on their own and decide to do something about it.
Yeah,
and they enact the ritual basically to
they cause the collapse in the mines when Harvey and his brother are working in the mines.
Harvey ends up getting out okay because Sabrina's been casting all sorts of magics on him.
Because
for that point specifically.
Because Sabrina worried about what the Weird Sisters would do, cast protection spells on Harvey, but she didn't cast any protection spells on his brother.
Yeah, or anybody else who works in the mine.
Yep.
And so this mine collapse happens, and Harvey gets out just fine, but his brother is trapped inside there. We know because of the Weird Sisters and what they did, and because of the way things developed behind the scenes with Sabrina talking to them and Prudence Knight and everything, we know he's dead.
Yeah.
But Harvey doesn't. Harvey's desperate to find him, to get him out of there.
I think Harvey's smart. I think Harvey can put two and two together. I think it's
before he thinks that he's dead.
I think it's less that he doesn't know. I think it's more that he's in shock and that he doesn't want to believe it until like he sees the body. Like as long as there's no body, there's still. What
I'm saying is even fairly early on, after the collapse, Sabrina learns that the Weird Sisters had done this, and at that point we know that he's dead. At that point, Harvey doesn't have any clue that he's dead. Like he only knows that he hasn't surfaced the other ones.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Throughout that time,
when they find his brother's hard hat, it's pretty obvious at that point.
Yeah, Susie ends up finding that.
Yeah, because Susie runs into the mines.
Not literally possessed, but like possessed with the idea that she can run in and find something to help.
Yeah, and so this leads to a whole thing where like Harvey's brother is dead. Harvey is shell-shocked. He doesn't know what he's going to do. His brother was the one protecting him from his alcoholic dad. It's bad. And so Sabrina...
Why should we say before this that also Roz ends up touching, Sabrina's other friend Roz ends up touching...
Whoa, wait, because you bring that up and you're opening another can of words that we have to go and explain. You're right, we have to turn the fuck back around and explain this. Yes.
we don't have to, because at that point we didn't know anything about her Roz's ability. This is like the first sign of it.
Right.
And we'll get to her ability and the machinations of that and or the meaning behind that later. We don't have to do that right now. All we have to say is that she has a vision when she touches. It's like Cisco in the Flash vibing.
Yeah. She can vibe, right?
Yeah. So she can vibe.
She can't open portals to other dimensions yet, but she can vibe.
And she sees two witches hitting dolls of Harvey and his brother with rocks and smashing them and performing some kind of a ritual. And she tells Sabrina this, who becomes absolutely furious and confronts Prudence Knight about it, who herself has no idea about this either. And then she becomes furious. So now it's like Sabrina and Prudence together against the other two weird sisters, saying, what the fuck did you do?
So Sabrina comes up with the idea that she is going to, to raise Harvey's brother from the dead. Like she gets the idea from the fact that Zelda kills Hilda and Hilda comes back through a plot on their estate, so she knows resurrection is possible. People, for obvious reasons, tell her, that's a very bad idea. Don't do that. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna. And so she turns to
her. Madam Satan ends up kind of dropping a hint that she has a Book of the Dead on her and where it is. But
to Madam Satan, and Madam Satan knowing that she could use this to cause chaos in Sabrina's life. And, basically, we should explain what Madam Satan's doing here. We should explain what she's doing and what her motivation is. Madam Satan wants Sabrina to sign the Book of the Beast. Sabrina is too attached to the mortal world and to her friends to do so. So her main strategy is that she is going to insert herself into Sabrina's life and that she is going to cut her off from her friends and sever her mortal connections, and that will force her to sign her name in the book. Mm-hmm. That is the general plan. And so she sees this as an opportunity to basically assist in cutting Sabrina off from Harvey specifically, who's her boyfriend and her strongest link. If she can separate Sabrina from Harvey, her job is made that much easier. And so she sees this as a prime opportunity to be like, oh yeah, if Sabrina fucks this up, then yeah. So she's going to do everything in her power to encourage Sabrina to do this, and then
without directly telling her. So she's
without directly telling her.
She's letting information slip out that she knows Sabrina wants. And then, but making it as if she's just kind of like not doing it intentionally.
Right.
And this causes Sabrina to go along with what Madam Satan's plan was all along, which is to take the book from Madam Satan to use this death magic. And she's going to use death magic to revive him. But part of the death magic requires a sacrifice. So she's talking to Prudence Knight. She also talks to Nicholas at the school, and they both kind of like advise her on what they need to do. And she kind of convinces Prudence to sacrifice one of her weird sisters.
Yeah, because
we don't know what the plan is at the time with the whole
plan. Well, because like the spell is sacred, it requires balance, it requires to bring one soul back, you have to sacrifice a soul,
Somehow Sabrina convinces Prudence to go along with this. We don't yet know how. We don't yet know like what she did to convince her.
This leads to like one of the most badass moments where they're doing the ritual, and then Sabrina, basically like the one weird sister there, Sabrina like slits her throat,
Yeah,
like
straight up murders her.
Just straight up without hesitation. And you're kind of like, holy shit, because at that point, like Sabrina had presented herself as somebody not really capable of that. Just cold blood murder right there,
Yeah. We quickly find out that there's a reason why she's able to do that so coldly, and there's a reason why Prudence went along with it. And that's because Sabrina's plan wasn't she can't get to the body of Harvey's brother. So she can't bury him in the yard to save him. But she could bring him back using her as a sacrifice and then revive her by putting her into this lawn. Ambrose kind of picks up on this as they're doing it, as they're burying the body and stuff, and is scolding her like, what the fuck are you doing, Sabrina? This is like, you do not mess with this kind of magic, and you definitely don't try to pull one over on death.
Right.
Like death is owed. You don't try to get away with this and like do a little trickery to get past death like he's just some kind of loophole you can circumvent,
Right. So the weird sister that Sabrina sacrificed and brought back through the Lazarus plot in her family cemetery, is sick and, throwing up dirt and shit, and also, like, Harvey's brother came back, but he doesn't have his soul, so he's not really him. He's just basically a zombie.
So it's just everything's a disaster here.
Yeah, everything's a disaster. And basically what this does is, like, this forces Sabrina to come clean to Harvey about what she is and what she did in exactly a situation, because there's no way around it at that point.
Mm-hmm. First, she ends up trying to just kind of get his brother's soul back.
Yes.
Which, Madam Satan ends up helping her with as well. And she goes into...
quotation marks.
Yeah, she goes into, like, the abyss. It's kind of like a purgatory.
She goes into limbo.
Yeah. It's kind of like a purgatory for souls that have unfinished business that are in this thing.
And she finds her mother in there.
Yes. She has a brief encounter with her mother. Her mother tells her, you need to get out of here. It'll find you, implying there's some kind of like a beast that has dominion over this limbo, and it eats souls that it catches. Yeah. So Sabrina is like, after that encounter with her mom, and now she's like only thinking about her mom, she ends up running into Harvey's brother there. And she's like, okay, we need to get out of here now, because she can hear the beast is like right on her trail.
Yeah.
And she's dragging him along behind her to get out of this. And he's just confused. He has no idea where he is, or he doesn't know he's dead, what's going on. And as she's pulling him out, he gets struck by the beast and consumed.
Right. Well, this is also like is Wardwell's fault, because she kind of like closes off like the exit, just long enough for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of manipulates it so that, Harvey's brother's soul is consumed before Sabrina can get out.
Yes. So this ends up, destroying Harvey's brother's chance of ever having a soul. And now he's like this soulless, kind of lifeless but moving animated corpse, basically.
And then basically she has to go to Harvey and say, you have to like physically kill your brother.
She says he has to die.
Yeah.
And she's going to take care of it, but Harvey says he'll do it himself, which is a heartbreaking thing. It's something that's going to put a permanent strain in the relationship. Like, that's not something that can ever be recovered from.
Right. And as far as where the series is right now, it isn't recovered from. So it destroys their relationship, their happy, good relationship, which is exactly what Madam Satan wanted, so mission accomplished there. So, okay, now we know she's been trying to sever Sabrina's ties with all her friends. That's how she got, Sabrina's ties to Harvey severed, but then, like, she also, like, works on manipulating, her other friend, Susie, because she's seeing, like, the spirit of a dead ancestor that she discovered, who's, like, talking to her and telling her things and manipulating her, And I have to believe that is Madam Satan,
Well,
manipulating her. We don't know, but it seems that way.
That what we're kind of told with Susie's life, because let's talk about Susie for a bit. So Susie's this very kind of small but boyish girl that's friends with Sabrina. She gets bullied a lot by the jocks at the school, who just straight up like beat on her like she's a boy or something.
Right, yeah.
Basically like taunt her constantly, bully her a lot. There's a few encounters. I don't think it's really necessary to go into them because it's not so central to the plot. There's a few things that like Sabrina does to kind of try to help her, and other things kind of go on.
Yeah,
but it's not that important to go into. But it's anyways. We end up finding a few things about her and her connection to kind of the weirdness in town. One is that, and again, it's not worth going into too much detail on, but she has an uncle that worked in the mines that's like possessed.
Mm-hmm. That turns out to be a plot by Madam Satan, by the way.
An aspect of it does, not the original possession.
I know it was very heavily applied that the original possession was like her doing.
Because I thought it had been that he'd been possessed for like a year or years or something.
Nope. I think the possession was like, I don't know. I'd have to go back and rewatch it, but it's very much implied.
Some manipulation by Madam Satan regardless.
It's very much implied that she summoned the demon to do that, and that after it did its job, which was to force Sabrina to do this exorcism, because that somehow will push Sabrina to the dark side. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure. that's how it's presented, but it was implied that the whole thing was to force Sabrina to do this one thing, and that after she did it, the mission was done, and so Miss Wardwell killed him.
Yeah, but to move on from that, because that's just I just wanted to bring that up as a little detail on the thing. The other thing is, as you mentioned, is that she has this ancestor in her family who was apparently responsible for bringing the witches to, Greendale, is it the town they live in?
Yeah, Greendale, yeah.
Bringing witches to Greendale, bringing them across from the old country and helping setting them up there. Also, at one point, you see these witches that were betrayed under this, and they had been left hanging from this tree, and it was this one ancestor of Susie's that eventually ended up cutting them down from the tree and burying them. So it's somebody that did a kindness to it for witches, or at least that's what she tells us. If that is a manipulation of Madame Satan's, that could all just be bullshit. We don't really know, but this is what we're kind of led to believe. But yeah, so that's one of the things that's kind of going on with one of Sabrina's friends. The other one is that her friend Roz is losing her eyesight.
Yeah, she's going blind.
And we had mentioned before that she was able to vibe.
She learns from her grandmother that all the women in her family are cursed to go blind, and then also get the power to vibe.
We should note, by the way, that her grandmother was Rose from Lost.
Yes.
So not ever missing an opportunity to mention Lost.
And so basically, that's her thing. Apparently, a witch cursed her family, a long ass time ago.
Apparently, her family betrayed some witches. They were cursed. They were cursed with blindness, so everybody in the family the women go blind at a certain point because of this curse, but as some side effect of that, they end up gaining this kind of supernatural sight. This is what they call the cunning.
Yeah, that's what her grandmother calls the cunning.
Yeah. So you have this is how all these aspects of the supernatural drip into Sabrina, the friends of Sabrina's lives, that shows that they have this connection to the supernatural that existed before Sabrina was ever friends with them.
Right, exactly. Because the entire town of Greendale is seeping with the supernatural,
Yes.
It's just one of those magnets for it.
Yes. Let's talk about Ambrose.
Ambrose is a warlock. He's Sabrina's cousin, and he's also under permanent house arrest because of, some misdeeds he did in the past involving the Catholic Church.
He was in part of some rebellion or something.
Yeah.
That did some kind of a terrorist act or something.
He apparently they tried to bomb the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
And so this guy
This is ages ago, by the way. This is they talked about the fact that Ambrose taught Houdini how to do stage magic and stuff. He's been around for a long time.
Another thing about one of the things about being a witch is that witches get to be immortal.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't call themselves mortal, because they're immortal. They live forever,
Yeah, or pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. They can be killed. In fact, they could be killed like anybody else, but, aging is just not a worry for them.
Yeah, that has to do with their contract with Satan when they sign in the book.
Right. So Ambrose is pretty old. So Ambrose, through that act, it got him put under permanent house arrest by the Church of Night. So he cannot leave the Spellman's mortuary at all.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this makes him morose. This makes him, he's kind of he's not enjoying life.
Yeah, he can leave the house, but he can't leave the property.
Right.
So, about the most he can do is stand outside the front door.
Right. Exactly. He can go into the yard. That's it.
But we have, through this character, we kind of see a confidant for Sabrina when she needs to talk to her family, when she can't talk to her aunt about things that she's kind of going through or struggling with.
Right, exactly, because obviously she's a teenager, and when you're a teenager, there's a lot of aspects of your life that you wouldn't tell your parents about, right? You wouldn't go up to your parents and just, can we talk about that? But,
So he's her supernatural confidant in that.
Yeah, he's a supernatural confidant in that, he's in that world, and that, and he's also older and wiser, and so he has knowledge that he can impart on her, so she can confide in him, and he can give her real advice.
Ambrose is also, as we learn, he's gay.
Yes.
And throughout the season, he develops a relationship with a witch who is a friend of another, or warlock who is a friend of another warlock that they discover dead. That at some point, it's kind of like a lost lead. It's like, so they bring it up and they don't really.
Yeah, they bring it up and then that was one of my disappointments with this, because they bring it up and you're like, oh, a mystery. Maybe there's like a witch hunter or something.
Yeah.
You're like, no, they just kind of drop it after they introduce this love interest. It just seemed to be like a way to get love interest for, into the show. And I'm like, come on, that's lame.
Yeah. So Ambrose he's a fun character. I really like him on the show, but besides, like, I think the biggest thing he does is kind of like, talk down to Sabrina about some of the stupid things she does. Like when she's performing death magic and he's like, what the hell are you doing?
Well, he basically tells her like stupid, impulsive things she does are stupid and impulsive,
Yeah.
Because he knows better and she doesn't.
That's kind of like the majority of his role in the show so far.
Yeah, pretty much.
By the end of the season, he ends up kind of getting out of his house arrest by working with Father Blackwood.
Well, yeah, he's working with Father Blackwood to get his house arrest lifted. We'll see how that goes.
Well, it's already lifted to some extent. He can leave the house now.
Well, no, it's lifted to the point where like he has to work for Father Blackwood at the school,
Yeah, but he can leave the house. Like he goes to a party.
Yeah,
he special and stuff.
Right.
So he can leave now. He's just kind of like on a leash.
Yeah, he's just on a leash. Yeah, exactly. He ain't fully free.
Yeah. I think what else we need to cover. How about Zelda's evolution? I have written on here in my show notes.
Zelda.
She's interesting because, like we mentioned, how much of a zealot she is.
Yes.
But through the course of the show, she ends up kind of questioning her beliefs. Not necessarily questioning her beliefs, but questioning how fervently she believes in certain things, or how fervently she follows the rules and kind of like the systems that she held as so sacred. I think a lot of this comes to a head when they had an episode where Sabrina was selected to be a sacrifice, to basically be eaten. It was like cannibalism by her fellow witches, and it's something that she cannot deal with. When she's like, when Sabrina's a candidate for this, and she doesn't end up getting it, but, doesn't end up getting selected for it. But like through that, I think it causes her to really question how fervently she believes in these things, because she was all like up for the idea of like, oh, if I was to be picked, that would be a great honor, But when Sabrina is up on the chopping block, she can't take it,
Right, exactly.
So these things start to kind of eat away at her zealous nature, leading up to the biggest thing she does, which is right towards the end of the series, which is Father Blackwood, his wife is having children. And
yes.
when she's helping deliver the children, she's like the night maid for these, as she says, for these children to help them into the world. When this happens, as she delivers the twins, one of them is male and one is female. And there's a big issue about how a female could challenge the heir for power or for position. And it should be like Blackwood wants like a male heir. And the idea is basically that this could lead Father Blackwood to basically causing something to befall one of his children.
Right.
And Zelda basically like fakes the infant's death and kidnaps it.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like, this is like the end point of her evolution, I think. Like, we start the show and she's just a full-on zealot. She's murdering her own sister, like, constantly, and then burying her in her garden where she's reborn, She's kind of, like, heartless about things. She's pushing Sabrina to sign her name in the book, just as hard as Father Blackwood is. She's very much going along with all of this.
But, like, her motivation is not because, of what Father Blackwood's motivation. Her motivation is because, she sees that, like that's a right that all witches had to do. She had to do it, sister had to do it, like everybody has to do it. And, Sabrina, and from her perspective, Sabrina is disrespecting the church by not going through with that.
And this is something that like changes over the course of the season, where she becomes less and less of a zealot. And by the end, when she kidnaps the child, she's showing care and concern for the child over kind of like the rights of her church.
Right.
So she's kind of like made that full transition at that point, I think. which kind of leads me to kind of like the last main kind of thing I want to talk about with the show, which is the fact that since I've been talking about the show with people, there's been like one way that I've been able to kind of describe the show. Because I always say it's a really weird show, and I try to explain it. And the term I've come down to is anti-moral. Shows often have like a moral to the story. Like there's something at the end, like, this is, the person did something bad, so now we have to show the consequences for what they did that was bad. And there's like a moral point in the show. Everything's about kind of achieving a moral balance within a show. This is very commonplace in almost all forms of entertainment in general. And it can be, sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's the right thing. Sometimes it can get a bit annoying when you just have constant moralizing from characters. It gets like old. And that's kind of what made me really like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, is that it was kind of like a breath of fresh air from all of that. And that's why I started saying, like, when I try to explain the show to people, I'd say it's anti-moral. That's what it is. It looks at kind of these kind of like moral lessons and stuff and just kind of throws them out. You see everything from the perspective of people that grew up within this environment. Like they take the idea of like worshiping Satan and not necessarily as a bad thing, not even as a sinister thing, but just like, it's just commonplace. Like even down to people saying things like, Satan bless us and things like that instead of God bless, or
right.
There's so many things like that are like kind of like, wow, like that just, it's not what you expect. The reason why it's not what you expect isn't just because they say it, but because they say it and there's no sinister overtone to it at all. And the show has plenty of sinister overtone, but not for that.
Well, not for that. Well, they basically present it like, it's a religion like Christianity is a religion,
Mm-hmm.
It's just another religion that these people practice.
Well, and that's just a part of the show in general. I mean, they touch on things like I said, like cannibalism, murder, things like that where they do it in certain ways, like where even if Sabrina had that plan where she was going to bury the one weird sister in the garden to kind of use it as a loophole to get around the magic, she still fucking slit that girl's throat. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
She still very coldly slit that girl's throat. And that's all ties into what I call like the anti-moral narrative of the series, which is just that like morals are out the window. Like, the characters do have like a sense of morality, but it's not at all in line with like normal morality, like what you'd expect to see in something else, It's very skewed in their own moral direction, their own moral construct, It's very different. So that's just, I wanted to bring that up about the show. We should probably get in and talk about the Christmas special now.
Yeah, we should talk about the Christmas special.
Because all this stuff is stuff we watched ages ago.
we should mention that Sabrina does end up signing the Book of the Beast at the end of the season.
She goes platinum blonde.
She goes platinum, yeah, exactly. which is like her hair color in the comic book. So finally, she has her canonical hair color. Yes.
You're a canonical fetishist.
Yes.
We should note that when she does that, after she signs it, it's because these three witches are not three witches. This group of witches that were hung. Yeah,
they summon an ancient group of witches.
Madam Satan
does. And then that she basically forces Sabrina to do it. But let's talk about the Christmas special.
Yeah. So after all of this, after her hair goes white, we have this kind of ominous feeling of like, oh, how is Sabrina involved in this? It's like, oh, I guess we'll have to wait till next year. Nope. We only have to wait like a month. For the Christmas special to come out. It's they call it the Midwinter special or something.
They call it Midwinter. Yeah. A Midwinters Tale, I think is the name of the episode.
Yeah.
And it's basically about the Spellmans not celebrating Christmas, but celebrating winter solstice, which has a lot of Christmas traditions, weirdly. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's where a lot of Christmas traditions came from.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of the other way around.
So they have a tree, they have Yule log, they have stockings, they have gifts, they read A Christmas Carol, and they watch It's a Wonderful Life, apparently.
Yeah. Some of these things are because certain people within their family wanted Sabrina to still be in touch with her human side, and so she had these kind of elements in her life. They do touch on the fact that, like, Zelda doesn't necessarily approve of most of this stuff, but she does like A Christmas Carol because she likes the ghost.
Yeah, because there are ghosts in it. Yeah.
But in general, she's not a fan of the Christmas aspects in their life. She likes the Yule log and these kind of, the winter solstice aspects that
she likes the
more by Christianity.
He likes the more pagan stuff.
Yeah, but you can tell that like Hilda and Ambrose both kind of had an aspect of keeping that in Sabrina's life, keeping like the more human traditions in her life as well. And so they have this celebration going on, and there's a few kind of plot threads kind of occurring alongside this. One is that, we talked about Sabrina running into her mother in the void or the abyss or whatever it is. And she wants to do a seance where she can be able to communicate to her mother.
Yeah.
In doing that, in the process of trying to kind of do the seance for her mother, she ends up doing something that kind of causes, I guess, the fire on the Yule log to go out, which is meant to be burning all night so that like certain spirits and can't get into the house. And we find out that some of those spirits that do in fact get into the house are these kind of mischievous children of this witch that had, I guess killed and eaten her own children as part of some kind of a pact that she had made with another witch, that the other witch didn't follow through with it. But the idea being that they were going to die, and for survival they had made this pact that they would eat their children in order to survive, and she's the only one that ended up sticking through with it. And so there's, this is like background story for witches and stuff. If you've ever watched like an episode of Supernatural and I have to have all the mythos around why there's a ghost.
Yeah,
it's like that kind of stuff for this character named Grilla is the name of this witch. And anyways, so that's kind of one storyline. They want to try to get rid of Grilla and these children from her house. They have to summon Grilla to get rid of the children.
Yeah, basically.
But in summoning Grilla, they they end up exposing the fact that they're holding on to this child, and Grilla has this thing for children and wanting to take children.
And wanting to take children and protect them and keep them safe and stuff.
So they end up, Sabrina and her mom in spirit form, who shows up again, end up tricking Grilla into leaving.
Yeah, without the baby. Like after making her think that she won the baby.
Which is a kind of a play on the whole, like, I'll cut the baby in half, or I'll cut the horse in half or something. What's that fable?
No, it's King Solomon, and he'll cut the child in half.
Yeah, and one side's like, okay, and the other side's like, no, I'd rather live without, Except it works the other way here. The one that's willing to cut it in half ends up winning, but that was all a trick.
Yeah, that was all a trick. Yeah, exactly.
So they got rid of these spirits, they got rid of Grilla. At the same time, though, there's another storyline going on, which is that Sabrina's friend Susie ends up getting kind of taken from her work by a demon.
Yes.
The person who kind of plays Santa at this place is actually a demon.
Turns out to be a demon who collects children and turns them into wax figures for some reason.
Yes. And so they're trying to figure out how to save her. They end up realizing that they can't fight this demon because it'll be too powerful during the winter solstice. But somebody who can fight this demon is Grilla, who they had just let go. And they end up figuring out that they can summon Grilla again, get Grilla's help to destroy this demon and save their friend without any repercussion for having just tricked her, just because Grilla is so obsessed with children that Grilla cannot let it slide that a demon is hurting children. It's just something that it's so fundamental to her nature that even if the person informing her is somebody that had slighted her, it just doesn't even matter.
It just doesn't even matter. She just wants to go kick the ass of the person who's harming children.
Yeah. So they end up saving Susie because of that. Besides that storyline, there's also Sabrina's, deteriorating relationship with Harvey.
She tries to make things better by giving Harvey's dad enchanted eggnog, which would make him quit being an alcoholic, and hopefully that would, make him a better person. She
also gives Harvey like these colored pencils that don't wear out.
And Harvey's like, I know what you did. Just don't cast any more spells like around me or near me or on me.
Because I don't trust magic. He gives her back the colored pencils as well.
So we know that their relationship is still far from being fixed.
Yes. That's pretty much it, right?
It was just like a little one-off. There's not much consequence for the overall plot.
Although it does do a little bit to talk about, Sabrina's mom and the situation with her, and her mom kind of finally finding a point of peace that should get her out of that limbo she was in.
That limbo she was in, exactly.
But it also kind of was able to set up the idea of the as a continued deterioration of the relationship. But then they did some other kind of like weird little tease at the end that I don't really kind of quite understand, which is as Ambrose was reading
Christmas Carol,
that's it. As Ambrose was reading the Christmas Carol, as they had mentioned earlier in the episode that they were going to do, we got to this cutscene where we saw these 3 like demonic looking figures.
Yeah, who looked like demonic versions of the wise men.
Yes.
Right? I don't know what that was about. Yeah, I don't know.
It was timed concurrently with him talking about the 3 ghosts.
I knew it was like an obvious reference to like the 3 wise men, but I just don't know what it means.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of just a setup for season 2.
Right.
But that's pretty much it. I mean, we got that was like the little tease for season 2 and then a few little character development bits and a general one-off. But yeah, pretty decent. I like Christmas specials. It's like, this is like a thing you get a lot in British shows. Doctor Who like almost always has one. For some reason, isn't having one this year, but almost always has like a really good Christmas special. And it's like a big thing in the UK, but you don't get that too much here. I mean, you know, shows that happen to be on when Christmas is occurring end up having Christmas episodes, but Christmas specials are a whole different thing. They're episodes that come out when the show isn't currently airing, you know, like when it's on hiatus and stuff. And here's a Christmas episode that comes out, and very popular, like I said, in the UK. There have been a few like Western shows that have tried it. I think largely because they were influenced by Doctor Who, probably, because it's usually like genre shows that have done it. And, you know, of course, genre shows are going to be influenced by Doctor Who, one of the biggest genre shows of all time.
We won't have to wait long for more Sabrina because season 2 drops April 5th.
Yeah, they started filming season 2 like before season 1 even came out.
Yep, it's actually already done filming as of this month, or at least it's going to be finished filming by the end of this month, I think.
Yeah, so we're getting Sabrina season 2 pretty quickly. This also goes a lot in line with what was the other show? Fuller House does this too, where they do like they don't have one season a year, like they do like something like 3 seasons every 2 years.
The way I think they're doing it, what it seems to me like they're doing it is they're filming it as if it's a regular television season of like 23 episodes or so.
Yeah, and they're just dividing it up differently.
And they're just dividing it up differently so that it's 23 episodes being filmed over the same period as most regular shows, but they're divvying it up so like 10 episodes of that is season 1, 10 episodes of season 2.
Which would make sense also just because Sabrina was originally intended to be a show on the CW.
Yeah, true. So they would have the shooting schedule if they were on the CW anyway.
Yeah, they would have what's called the back 9, which is they air 13 episodes and then they have 9 more episodes.
And then they have 9 more episodes, yep. After a short break, because networks always break over the holidays anyway, and then shows typically come back in January.
Yeah, for the mid-season premieres.
Yeah, the mid-season premieres, yeah.
So yeah, it's just kind of interesting that they actually had a Christmas special for Sabrina. Of all shows, it kind of like makes sense the most just because of its religious identity, you know? And it's the kind of anti-moral thing, like it kind of fits to have a Christmas special, even though it fits in kind of an ironic way. I like that. In general, I really like this show. Yeah,
in general, I really like this show too. I think it's pretty good.
There's a few things that feel like they're kind of a bit spotty, like you could, you know, it's a whole thing, you could drive a truck through it.
At first, like the first half season, I wasn't like into like the teen drama and like stuff going on at school, like Susie being bullied by jocks and
the feminist messages and stuff.
And they decided to make this club, and I'm just like, I don't care about the school stuff, but like they dropped the high school like drama stuff like in the back half of the season, and for the better.
Yeah, even though she still has a relationship with her friends and her friends are still involved in the storyline, they're not involved with these trite little things anymore. They're like
they get involved into the bigger picture, which is good.
Yes. Sabrina doesn't have any Ritas yet on its show.
Right, yeah, exactly. and I like that we're in a place now where, like, everybody knows she's a witch, so, like, there's no tiptoeing around it.
Yeah, they did that pretty quickly. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, they did, yeah, exactly.
Coming from something like Smallville, where they you know, got, like, 3 or 4 people learning the identity over the course of, like, 10 years. To have kind of, like, all of her friends find out within, like, the first season has been kind of cool.
Right, exactly. I like that because, like, the whole thing where, like, I have a secret, I have to keep it forever. It gets tiring, you know.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the cast on this. I think Kernan Shipka, who plays Sabrina, is amazing on the show.
Yeah, she's a great actress for sure.
She got trained on the right show. She started out in Mad Men. She was the young
right. She had to she had to hold her own against, you know, like John Hamm and like those actors on screen, you know.
Yeah, she had to hold her own on top tier TV.
Yeah, exactly.
So she looks like the character. She acts like the character. all of it works out really well. Unfortunately, she's allergic to cats, so we're not going to see too many scenes of her in Salem together.
Shame. That's a shame.
But that's just, I mean, what can you do about that?
What can you do? Yeah, exactly.
Should note that her aunts are Zelda Spellman is played by Miranda Otto from The Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
No Man in particular, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
No man can kill me. I am no man. That's Zelda Spellman. Hilda Spellman is played by Lucy Davis, who people might recognize from Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead, exactly. That's where I recognize her from.
There's a lot of newcomers on here, so we won't go into people like, Ambrose and Harvey and stuff. Those are mostly newcomers.
Harvey is an actor from like a Disney show, AJ and Allie or something. Yeah.
Don't care about those Disney shows.
Don't care about those Disney shows. Tyson Gifford, 2018.
Prudence, though. Prudence Knight is played by Tati Gabriel, who is in The 100.
Oh, okay.
So that's interesting because she's still on The 100. She's not off that show. And that's a show that is also on the CW. I say also because Sabrina was originally supposed to be on the CW. So I just find that kind of interesting. She's probably cast on that show because the show started its life as a CW show.
Right, right.
And so there's that connection between, shows where they kind of will cross-cast and stuff. So also the actress who plays Roz, her friend, was on The Vampire Diaries, another CW show. So you have a lot of stuff like that. One character we didn't really talk about much at all is Principal George Hawthorne, who is played by
Bronson Pinchot from Perfect Strangers.
Yeah, Balky himself. Yeah.
Yeah, which ages since I saw that actor. I was like, holy crap. We didn't talk about him because he ends up being pretty irrelevant.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, we talked about the earlier plot kind of having like a lot of like feminist kind of aspects and stuff and smaller kind of things.
He's only important so much as like the high school stuff is important.
Exactly. And he's the principal that's like misogynistic and.
Yeah, he's a misogynistic asshole principal. And once that stuff stops being important, he becomes completely irrelevant to the point where he's just killed off at the end of the season.
Yeah. Much more notably, though, is Mary Wardwell, or Madam Satan, is played by Michelle Gomez.
From Doctor Who.
Yep, Doctor Who, Green Wing. She's a Scottish actress, been in a bunch of stuff. I've actually met her. She's very nice. She's a great actress, and she's great at just playing just weird characters.
Right, and she does a fantastic job in this, by the way.
She just brings that right amount of like kind of weird, to that character. Yeah,
exactly. Like she does. She plays it off great. Like she is the perfect amount of weird. Like this woman is weird and creepy, but also seemingly reassuring, right? Yeah. It's a tough line to pull, and she pulls it marvelously.
It's a bit of inspired casting, and it had to have come from that market, because I don't know if I've ever seen Michelle Gomez in a different American production. So it's not like she was just auditioning for roles in American drama. She had to have been sought out.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. She hasn't. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I know her from Doctor Who, that's a British production. So
yeah. And that's what she does. So she has to have been sought out for this role.
And also that means she had to come up with an American accent for this role. And again, a lot of British actors are like this, where they can put on these fantastic, and you wouldn't even be able to tell. Like with Miss Wardwell, you cannot tell that woman is Scottish.
Yeah. There's also, we have two actors in the show, both in small roles, one very small role and one very small role that could become a bigger role, and another small role that has definitely been hinted at it being a much more significant role in the next season. We have two characters from Battlestar Galactica, or two actors. Michael Hogan, who is Saul in Battlestar Galactica, the guy with one eye. He played Grandfather Kinkle. He was Harvey's grandfather. The thing they kind of put on him is we only really saw him when they went on that hunting trip in that one episode.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing they kind of pushed on him was that he was talking about their family history as witch hunters.
Yes.
When they were walking through the woods, with a bit of zeal to it that might suggest that he's not talking about it so much in the past tense.
Right.
There's a hint of that. So if they do end up doing something with that storyline about the one kid the one warlock that ended up found dead, it could very well be the fact that, there's some involvement from old Grandfather Kinkle, which would make a lot of sense, because why else would you cast Michael Hogan?
Next
for
season,
a one episode role,
And next season, we're also getting we're getting Wesley from Buffy and Angel, the actor who played him.
Yes, yes, as well. That's actually the husband of
Miss Wardwell.
Willow. No, I was going to say in real life, the husband of Willow.
Yeah. He's married to her in real life. Yeah, exactly. In the show, he is Miss Wardwell's fiance who has come back from overseas.
Yeah.
And doesn't realize that his fiance is actually dead and is actually just has a demon possessing her flesh suit.
The other character, though, from Battlestar Galactica I wanted to bring up is Dr. Cerberus, who is Hilda's kind of romantic interest. He's the guy that owns that bookstore cafe. And yeah, he was on Battlestar Galactica as well.
Nice.
So we got 2 from there. Also, the guy who played Daniel Webster, Sabrina's lawyer, he played Einstein on Legends of Tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
In like a little one-off episode. And we'd already mentioned that L. Scott Caldwell, who plays Nana Ruth Walker, Roz's grandmother, was Rose on Lost.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to kind of do a little call out to some of those genre actors that kind of popped up in there.
Cool.
Did you know also that Sabrina's dad was in like the last episode of the last season of The Magicians?
No.
He played Prometheus.
Okay, like really, that is like a deep dive because like Sabrina's dad barely like shows up in Sabrina, so like
yeah, I don't even think he has a single spoken line.
Yeah, exactly. So for me to recognize him and say that's the guy from the last episode of The Magicians, like come on,
you should have noticed this bit part role in The Magicians in one episode of The Magicians,
and his bit part role in Sabrina.
Yeah. He was in more episodes of Sabrina, but probably with less combined screen time.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, that's it for our Sabrina episode. We're recording this on Friday, December 4th, on Saturday, December 15th, 2018. But we start talking about what shows are coming up on Fridays. So we're going to be talking about what came out on Friday, December 14th. I want to note beforehand, though, that unless something changes, we're actually going to be recording another episode of the podcast tomorrow. It'll still be coming out at its regular time. So this episode will come out on like Monday, and the next episode will come out like next Monday, like on Christmas Eve or something. But talking about what shows are coming up, we've been talking about Chilling Adventures of Sabrina at Midwinters Tale, the Christmas special. That came out this Friday, December 14th. Cuckoo returned to Netflix. We talked about that last week on this segment of the podcast. That's a show that Andy Samberg was originally in and Tyler Lochner is in now. It's a British show. It's really funny. The Fix comes to Netflix. Fuller House back on Netflix. Hymn of Death, the miniseries on Netflix. Innocent Man. This is a documentary miniseries on Netflix. The Protector on Netflix. Tidelands on Netflix. Travelers back on Netflix. Voltron back on Netflix. Look at how many Netflix shows. It's just mind blowing. Yeah, and LOL, Last One Laughing on Amazon. Then on Tuesday, December 18th, Baki. This is an anime series, comes to Netflix. And Terrace House Opening New Doors comes to Netflix. Then on Thursday, December 20th, Timeless gets its movie conclusion. If you remember, that was the show that got canceled like 3 times. Timeless was canceled and then picked up again after like a few days. By the same channel, not by another channel. It ended up getting canceled again after its second season and got picked up again, but this time just for a movie to kind of conclude the storyline. So,
yeah. Can
you imagine anything like this, like at all? Like the idea of a show being picked up after it was canceled happening when we were like growing up?
That happened to Family Guy.
Yeah, but I mean, that's probably like the earliest one I can think of.
That's the earliest one I can think of, yeah.
Times have changed so much, you know? I mean, now a show's canceled and it doesn't feel definitive.
Right, exactly.
But anyways, that's, the Timeless, the movie conclusion of the series is on Thursday, December 20th. And then on Friday, December 21st, Marvel's Runaways comes back to Hulu for its second season. Vanity Fair has its miniseries on Amazon. Diablero comes to Netflix. Tales of Arcadia 3 Below. If you've watched the Troll Hunter series on Netflix, this is like connected to that universe. Also from Guillermo del Toro, just like Troll Hunters was. That comes to Netflix. Dairy Girls comes to Netflix. Last Hope, which is an anime series, comes to Netflix. Perfume, which is an adaptation of a book that was previously adapted as a movie, I remember, by a German director I really like named Tom Tykwer. But anyways, this is a new version of that story. It's coming to Netflix. Sirius the Jaeger to Netflix, and Wolf to Netflix. So another whole shit ton of Netflix shows next Friday.
Nice.
As always, usually when we talk about stuff, new shows starting in December, it's like 3 or 4 shows in a week or something, but Netflix is just just up the ante of that, because they always have at least 10 shows coming out a week.
Right.
So next week we're going to be talking about Castlevania. Hopefully we'll have a guest on there. We were going to have 2 guests for this discussion. We ended up delaying this conversation. One of them is still probably not going to be able to make it, unfortunately, just due to personal reasons. But another one should be able to join us. So we should have a guest when we record that episode tomorrow, but that episode won't be out until next week. So don't be waiting for it this week. But we should be recording that tomorrow. But so that's the Castlevania is going to be next week. Until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. I've usually had better luck just looking up the Total Screen rather than the weekly set. When I looked up the weekly set, it usually doesn't come up. On some of them it does, but not all of them. So try just looking up the Total Screen, and then you'll see the weekly set as one of the options that comes up when you do that. So yeah, look that up. You can subscribe on iTunes, Pocket Cast, other podcast clients. And the entire backlog of this podcast is also available on our YouTube channel. So if you go there, you can see every single episode we've ever done. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best